Passes. Members, we are going to jump to file item 93. That's SB 48. We have amendments at the desk. Clerk will read with amendments.
Senate Bill 48 with amendments by Assemblymember Rendon.
Mr. Rendon, you may open on the amendments.
Speaker and members, I rise to present chaptering amendments to SB 48, which adopts several reforms to the Public Utilities Commission. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Rendon. Seeing no discussion or debate on the item and without objection, we may take a voice vote on these amendments. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. Bill is out to print and back on file. Moving back to motions and resolutions, Mr. Holden, you are recognized for your procedural motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request unanimous consent to suspend Joint Rule 62A, the file notice requirements, to allow the Insurance Committee to meet and to hear AB 387 McCarty on Thursday, September 10th, 2015, 9:30 a.m. in room 447.
Without objection, the request is granted. Members, there is no consent calendar today. Members, it has been determined that we are not going to be taking up any additional measures today. I know that is of great disappointment. Members, we are going to move to announcements and adjournments in memory. The following members were granted prior permission to speak on an adjournment in memory. Members, if you will please take your seats. Please take your seats, members, so we may proceed. While members are taking their seats, Mr. Bonta, do you have an announcement for us? Members, please give Mr. Bonta your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Today, I rise to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Delano grape strike of 1965. On the evening of September 7th, 1965, at the Filipino Community Hall in Delano, California, Filipino farm workers, led by leaders of the Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee, Larry Itliong, Pete Velasco, and others, voted to strike for better wages, improved working conditions, dignity, and respect. These Filipino leaders successfully asked the mostly Latino Farm Workers Union, the National Farm Workers Association, led by Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, to join the strike. The Filipinos voting in that hall 50 years ago likely did not realize how their vote would change the world. It was a vote that led to a 5-year grape strike. It was a vote that eventually led to the creation of the now world-famous union, the United Farm Workers of America. It was a vote that eventually led to more just, more equal treatment for all workers. And it was a vote that's considered one of the most significant moments in farm labor history. This past Saturday, I had the honor and privilege of visiting Delano and the Filipino Community Hall along with Assemblymember Salas. It was a humbling experience to stand in the very room where great leaders cast that transformative vote to change the world. And it's my hope that all of us working together in this House be informed and inspired by the brave vote that those individuals took 50 years ago. So thank you, members, for remembering the Delano Grape Strike of 1965 and honoring its 50th anniversary this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonta. Members, please give your attention to Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams, you are recognized for your adjournment in memory.
Members, I'd ask that you would adjourn in memory of Steve Cummings. If any of you have been coming to Democratic conventions for some time, you may have met him. Described by Ventura Mayor Cheryl Heitman as passionate about his community, his contributions were numerous, and he will be missed by many. Steve's dedication to historic preservation spanned 3 decades and helped to shape Ventura County's cultural and civic landscape. He was 68 years old. Mr. Cummings was instrumental behind the restoration and upkeep of the historic Dudley House, the 1892 Victorian farmhouse at Ashwood Avenue and Loma Vista Drive in the city of Ventura. He served as president for the nonprofits Santa Buenaventura Heritage, Inc. for 27 years. This nonprofit operates the Dudley House on city-owned property. He helped to facilitate the preservation of the Sarah Cross at Grant Park. His most recent unfinished project was developing a formal historical trail in Ventura. The intention is to have designated sites with monument plaques along the trail. He was working on this project with Kevin Clarisi, Executive Director of Downtown Ventura Partners. He was a thinker. He was one of those brilliant people that sometimes spend a lot of time coming up with great ideas. Not everyone could communicate with him on them, but for me it was very special to talk with him and to realize that he had great ideas behind historic preservation, redistricting, and constituent service. Mr. Cummings will be greatly missed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. Mr. Holden, you are recognized for your procedural motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request unanimous consent to suspend Joint Rule 62A, the file notice requirements to allow the Housing and Community Development Committee to meet and to hear AB 786 Levine on Wednesday, September 10th, 2015, 9 a.m. in room 126.
Without objection, the request is granted. Members, pursuant to Assembly Rule 77.2, I am re-referring Senate Bill 350 to the Natural Resources Committee. Members, we have an item on call. I am prepared to lift the call on file item 83. That's Senate Bill 308. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 71, noes 34. Measure fails. Mr. Bloom notices reconsideration. Correction for the file. Ayes 21.
I don't think they.
Not 71. Members, tomorrow, September 10th, concurrence bills may be taken up without the one-day waiting period. Also, no reconsideration is in order on the last two legislative days preceding the interim recess on bills that pass. Tomorrow, concurrence bills may be taken up without the one-day waiting period. No reconsideration is in order on the last 2 days preceding the interim recess on bills that pass. All other items remaining will be passed and retained. All motions shall be continued. Assemblymember Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members.
Sorry, Mr. Gray. We have to entertain a motion to adjourn. Then we will move to you, Mr. Gray. Seeing and hearing no further business, I'm ready to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Ridley Thomas wants to take up his motion to reconsider before we adjourn.
Okay. Mr. Gray, with your agreement, sir, I'd like to go to Mr. Ridley Thomas for one piece of business before we go to Mr. Gray. Mr. Ridley Thomas.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask unanimous consent that file item 68, SB 32, be granted reconsideration.
Mr. Ridley Thomas notices reconsideration. Members, Mr. Ridley Thomas is asking for unanimous consent on the motion to reconsider. Seeing no objection. There is an objection. Ms. Olson is withholding unanimous consent on the motion to reconsider. This is a 41 vote item. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 32 by Senator Pavley and others, and act relating to greenhouse gases.
The clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. This requires 41 votes, members, on reconsideration. 41 votes. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 It's on reconsideration, members. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tie the vote. Ayes 41, noes 28. Reconsideration is granted. Members, we have a motion by Mr. Holden, a second by Ms. Garcia, that we adjourn. Assembly Member Gray, for what purpose do you rise, Mr. Gray?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak on condition of the file.
You may proceed, Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I've spent many hours with all of you on this floor discussing our obligation and duty to ensure that government has proper oversight. I have gone so far as to suggest that our state's greatest need is not new laws, but rather more stringent and unrelenting management and accountability for the laws already on the books. It is not uncommon, members, to hear politicians talk about government should be run like a business. Many of these same politicians talk about cutting and shrinking government. Some even promote creating a part-time legislature. But that always struck me as odd, not because I entirely disagree that the government should be efficient, but because I watched my father run a business for many, many years. And if I learned anything from him, it was that you have to show up every day. A successful business requires constant vigilance. You don't write a business plan, hire your employees, invest your money, and then walk away. It is appropriate at times in government, members, to delegate authority, but we should never delegate responsibility. Over the next few days, we will be asked to cast hundreds of important votes. It is our job. It is why people elected us. But despite our differences on the issue, we all have one thing in common, that's our right to vote.
30 seconds, Mr. Gray.
Senate Bill 350 is one of those issues. Some will vote yes, some will vote no, but we should all agree on one thing, and that's we retain our authority, retain our responsibility. This bill simply isn't about the environment and the economy, it's about democracy versus bureaucracy. So I'm asking my colleagues today, regardless of your stance on other provisions of the bill, do not support provisions that handcuff this legislature. We did not ask people to vote for us so that we could give up our right to vote for them.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. The session schedule is as follows: Thursday, September 10th, floor session at 10 a.m. Friday, September 11th, floor session at 10 a.m. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned. This House stands adjourned until Thursday, September 10th at 10 a.m. Quorum call is lifted.